Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Sales Hacker webinar. It's so good to see everybody here. I know I can't see you, but you can see me, and I wish I could see you. We got 12 people in the room so far, and I know that number is going to go up because a lot of people signed up to be here today. So if this is your first time in a Sales Hacker webinar, I want to say a quick welcome and introduce myself. My name is Colin Campbell. I lead the community team at Outreach in the Sales Hacker team. Hey, April. Um, and like I said, if this is your first time, you don't know, we get pretty friendly. If you're a regular and you've been here before, you know your first job is to go down to the chat, open up that chat, see that little blue box that says to. Make sure it says to hosts and to everyone. That way everybody can see everything. You can talk to each other. You can connect with each other on LinkedIn, have a side discussion, ask your questions there, and we'll make sure that we get to them. So welcome. I'm really happy you gave us your time today. What we're going to do is jump right in. We're talking about automation in the sales cycle and how you can use it to accelerate. And I think there's a common saying here that if you automate a bad process, you're just doing bad things faster or doing more bad things. So the big question becomes, how do you know what you don't know? How do you know when you're ready to start automating? And what are the steps that you actually need to take to do it right the first time so you don't find yourself in reverse trying to undo a whole bunch of stuff that you did wrong? And Brad's the perfect person to really talk to us about that. We got Brad Brochacki here. He is the Director of Digital Transformation for Automation at Conga, which, by the way, Brad, thanks for sharing. I'll ask you to share a little bit of your background because it is a fascinating bit of experience that you have.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much, Colin, and thanks everyone for being here. For me, I have over a decade of experience working really at a wide variety of companies, which teaches you a lot. My undergraduate and MBA is from the University of Denver. I'm based out of Denver, Colorado, with a focus in entrepreneurship and innovation. So for me, it was really working at every single size startup I could work at. I've worked at companies that are a dozen people. I've worked at companies that are over 1,000 people. So really assisting across sales and marketing, working in sales enablement, marketing, product marketing, branding, and all the ins and outs. So really a lot of experience with really enabling salespeople to be successful. And as you'll see in this presentation, getting a better understanding of really what are the pain points, what are common use cases that sales teams can begin to automate, can begin to fix that process to make sure that we're set up for success.
Awesome. So I think, I'll drop in the chat now. We're going to take questions throughout, everybody. So when you have questions, drop them in. I'll make sure we get good answers. Keep that chat active. Make some friends. Just want to make you know we take your time commitment today very seriously. And if you're watching the recording later on, by the way, I hope you can drop by live sometime and join us because we have some fun. So, Brad, where do you want to start?
Yeah, I always really like to start with a very simple stat to kind of set the scene. And that is really our first quiz question. So the first quiz question I would love to kind of get everyone's interaction with is, on average, how much of a salesperson's time do you think is spent on tasks that do not produce revenue? You'll see here the quizzes popped up, so please just type in your answer to your selection, and I'd love to kind of get really to set the scene on what you think that number is.
How much of a salesperson's time is spent on tasks that do not produce revenue?
Because that's really a common assumption, is that, a lot of people presume if you're not in sales that, salespeople are just making sales. They're closing deals. But in reality, a lot of us know that's not the case. So yeah, go ahead, type in your responses, because I think it'll be surprising.
We need some answers here, folks, if you're watching. What do you think? Oh, got some errors. That's a bummer. Well, tell you what, type your guesses in the chat. I'm going to say my guess is, I hate to say this about my fellow sales folks, but I'm going to say 56%. I think 56% of the time is not spent selling. And we've got guesses in the chat. Looks like 56, 77. Most of the people hovering around the 50 to 70 range.
Yeah, so kind of as those questions are the answers are still coming in, CSO Insights actually says 62% of a typical salesperson's time is spent on responsibilities that do not produce revenue. And obviously, we all know that's a lot of time. But in reality, we all know that you're spending your time updating records in your CRM, seeking the right approvals, building out appropriate quotes and proposals, communicating with customers, and finding the right documentation to send to your prospects at that right time in the sales cycle. But, foreshadowing, we know there's a simple way to solve this, and that's automation. Because automation is going to ensure that your sales team gets to your customers faster. It's going to help meet customer expectations who demand that information right away. And if you don't deliver to that customer right away, they're going to find a competitor who will. So in reality, automation is going to connect that customer experience. This is a recent survey that we did, is that specifically automating commercial processes is relatively new, because a lot of people thought that this used to be a nice to have, especially before the pandemic, because automation tool sets, RPA, DPA, for those of you who don't know, that's data and process automation, robotic process automation, and a lot of the tools that are being implemented now weren't really around, and it was that nice to have because people weren't specifically looking for it, because companies didn't think they needed it. They didn't think they were mature enough. And a survey we did with GLG found that 43% of respondents said that data and process automation tools were provided as an add-on to another bundle or package that they were purchasing, yet 62% said they would consider buying it as a standalone product. So me at our company here, Conga, understood, well, our automation tools weren't primary problem solvers. They weren't top of mind. It was this nice to have, which really surprised us. But as the pandemic hit, we found out that that landscape was changing, because in reality, automation now is booming more than ever. A McKinsey survey recently told us that at least a third of activities could be automated in about 60% of occupations. Salesforce reported in their latest Trends in Workflow Automation report that 95% of IT leaders are prioritizing workflow automation, with 70% seeing more than 4 hours saved for every week for each employee. And according to Forbes magazine, automation is the third most important thing for employees in 2021. So in fact, automation really is more important than ever. It's becoming a necessity. Are there any questions before I keep going, kind of as relaying the landscape of what the industry is seeing in automation?
One question popped up earlier about percentage of time spent on revenue generating activities. This is from Tommy. Does meeting prep count as a revenue generating activity?
Meeting prep does not count amongst that number. And meeting prep is something that when we're talking about, we'll talk about some use cases later, but when you're pulling the right data and reporting, this is a simple process that can be automated. So really the way you're interacting with your CRM, a lot of times, whether that's Salesforce, whether that's another tool, is that you're having to go into individual opportunities and source that appropriate data. Now, how can you do a better job than going into that particular company, that particular contact, and kind of going to the specific fields? Are there ways that that data can be pulled? Is that way that data can be visualized? Is a way that data can be modified automatically? So when you are coming up to that sales call, or maybe if you're later in the process at a QBR, an annual review, a renewal, how can that data better tell you a story of really the health of that customer? So we're going to talk about that later in use cases, but meeting prep is not amongst the 62%.
Just one other thing I wanted to say about automation is that this is not something that's happening just in sales and marketing. Like, I used to work at a marketing agency, and one of the partners that I worked with was a company called UiPath. So they do something called RPA, robotic process automation, and not something that most people would know about, but they work closely with the big four accounting firms and things like that. And they IPO'd, I think it was earlier this year, maybe last year, at a market cap of something like $40 billion. And that was meteoric rise of growth in just the last, less than a decade. So it's this is like a broad market transformation of the world, not just sales and marketing, right, Brad?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have a slide later that shows really those use cases across the board in your company. There's a major shift right now in legal departments in the way that legal is intervening with approving your contracts, the things you're sending your customers. Marketing is using automation all the time, obviously, and sales outside of just the automated emails that you're sending. But we know, data is telling us that we can send cadences, we can send automation to always stay top of mind, and also really know that based on customer health, based on last customer interaction, marketing is using automation a lot to really be able to tell the right story to the prospect at the right time.
Got it. Cool.
So another question I have for the group. It looks like the quiz format is broken right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and tell the stat. But right now we're entering the Great Resignation. So for those of you, especially in the States, Forbes recently released an article earlier this year that in April alone, the Department of Labor reported that 4.1 million Americans quit their job, and every month thereafter, about 1 million people have quit. And as you can see in this chart, whether that be quitting or working from home, a lot of people presume this is a blue collar issue, but in reality, it's really across the board. Because according to the Department of Labor, people are thinking that this is an overall collective reassessment about priorities of really what matters most, and whether that be going back into the office or not going back to the office, that people are really reevaluating their career choices. And what this means and why I like to show this is because our employers are realizing that we have to do arguably more work than ever now with less workforce. So for those who are working, sometimes there's less employees at your company and they're spread out across the world. No longer are we in an office place, but as you can see in this chart, we're expecting about 18 million people to now shift to a work from home lifestyle with the pandemic. So all of a sudden you have less workers spread out everywhere, and employers are realizing that you need automation tools to help companies continue to get work done and continue those processes. So I can spit out facts all day about how popular automation is and why it's important, but I want to take a moment to really identify the why. So why is automation more popular than ever, and why is everyone prioritizing it now? And I wanted to break it into 4 main reasons. The first, and this ties into the last slide, is the way we work is changing. So by choice or not, we're moving into this remote work environment to get business done. And 74% of professionals expect remote work to become standard. And Forbes has now pointed out that remote work is the biggest draw for top talent at companies right now. So along with working from home, businesses done differently. So as I've said, you have to better understand what processes can be done from different locations across the world. You're no longer going into an office and getting an approval from a boss. You're no longer talking about redlining or discounting or changing pricing to a proposal or quote amongst other employees. This is all being done digitally. And how can we repeat these processes and automate these so this can be done as quickly as possible so you can realize revenue faster? 2, the world is moving away from paper, because we know that moving away from paper is going to save us time, save us space, ease transfer of information, and boost security. So whether you're in the office with your team, or at home, or at a coffee bar, tools like document generation, e-signature, process automation, productivity tools are going to allow you to get business done more effectively and efficiently. And simply put, work is now going to be able to be done more by less people. Third is that automation is going to allow your company to save time and be more productive. So that same survey we showed you a few slides ago from GLG, we did a survey where our customers told us that our workflow and approvals tool set that Conga provides decreased the time needed to approve a deal by 37%, and deal flow visibility was increased by 33%.
Can you say that again? Those 2 stats again?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Our workflow and approvals tool set, we sell workflow and approvals software, is that it was able to decrease the time needed to approve a deal by 37%, and deal flow visibility was increased by 33%. So not only were deals getting approved faster, but you could have that full workflow visibility where you could understand what was coming in the pipeline. So you knew that here's my workload now versus here's what's coming in next week, based on automation is constantly tracking kind of that data feedback of understanding that we know on average a deal takes X number of hours, X number of days. So you can be able to almost tell into the future and say, well, I know that this is coming in now. And on average, we know that because this takes 6 days, that this is coming down for approval or for review or for signature next week or the week after. Additionally, our customers actually told us that they were 10 times more productive using some of our automation software, especially in the data management space. So being able to, that kind of tied into the meeting prep question earlier of when you're able to pull the right data and that data is able to tell you a story that you can take action on, it allows you to move faster. The last point was that we're experiencing higher employee churn. So this is not only employees quitting in general, but employees are not staying at their employer as long as they used to. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics has actually shown us that employee quits have increased for 10 years straight. So people are staying at companies less because there's just more options. Now in a digitized world, the ability to work from home, you're no longer just constrained to jobs in your city or in your zip code, but now you're able to work anywhere. And with increasing options, with increasing, with growing industries, that people are finding better options to go other places. So with this, you're having employees that essentially can leave a company and you're losing that knowledge of process. You're losing that knowledge of how things are done. So by implementing automation, all of a sudden, companies are able to say that when I'm dealing with this increased employee churn, when employees are quitting because of the pandemic or for whatever reasons, I need the ability to continue to keep these processes going and make sure that my revenue process is as fast as humanly possible so my salespeople can close deals and get paid. So another quick question I had for everyone was actually, according to the Work Institute, we have some data on what % of a workforce churns every year. And because the poll question is not functional, the answer is 25%. So a quarter of a company is churning every single year. So you're losing a lot of information on process, on how things are done. So with this natural turnover, we don't want to lose this talent, but because you do, you need automation in place, because that way you can keep that process knowledge, how operations are completed, all that's automated. So not only are you not losing that when people leave your company, but when new people are joining your company, that onboarding process to get up to speed is as fast as possible, and you're making sure that you're not interrupting your revenue cycle. So kind of in closing of this slide, putting time into automation is going to help those first 3 steps, which in turn affects employee churn. So automating revenue processes is going to make working from home easier, more consistent, and more efficient. Additionally, automating and digitizing paper documents and processes allows your team to get more done with less. Employees can onboard and learn processes faster, and they can affect revenue operations more quickly. And with more productive employees that can do more with less and can work from anywhere, this can have a direct effect on employee churn. So in summary, automation tools are becoming the status quo. Valuable work is getting done no matter the experience level of the employee, and we're creating a consistent and repetitive experience that reduces risk along the way. Now, I just gave you a great example of the employee experience with employer experience, but arguably what's even more important is that a better employee experience is going to therefore lead to a better customer experience. This idea of putting the customer first is going to become much easier to manage when your customers can get information immediately with correct data on correct company branding. They're going to be able to interact with you on multiple channels. So the ability to interact, approve deals, provide red lines via any device during this revenue operations process is going to be invaluable. And finally, the customer experience is connected. So they're getting the right data at the appropriate part of the customer journey. They're going to be able to move as fast or as slow as they want, and automation is going to tell you and automatically send that appropriate bit of data or that white paper or that data sheet, whatever it is, to the customer when they're interacting, when they are asking questions. Automation is going to be able to do this all for you. And everything is going to be tailored to meet their unique needs. So now we've transferred the power and priority to your customers and prospects.
This is interesting because you hear a lot these days, Brad, about like buyer first and customer centric in buying cycles, and how do you make your sales process match what your customer or your prospect wants to be doing. But it sounds like what you're saying is, if you actually, like, that could be a lagging indicator. That could be the outcome. But if you focus too much on that, you end up with unhappy employees. Without the right tools, you end up with unhappy employees, which then makes prospects unhappy. If you focus instead on empowering your employees, making their experience positive with the right tools, the right processes, making their time efficient, giving them flexibility, then you end up with happy employees, which results in happy customers. You kind of flipped it on its head.
Exactly. And that's the idea, is that when we're talking about a fairly, what can be a tedious job is that selling is hard. We all know this on this call, and it can be a very manual and tedious process if not done right, because you're going down a list of calls, you're going through contact information and sending reach outs. And now, especially with kind of tools such as, SalesLoft, things like that, where you're able to cater specific messages. Not only are we creating automated cadences, but what this automation is able to tell us now is that we now know when we're sending something kind of over the wall to a prospect or customer. In the past, a lot of that information was lost. We now know what information is being opened, what's being read, what's being clicked. And we know that on average in the marketing world, it takes about 7 touches to convert a customer. So, we all know here on this call, most times you're not giving one call and someone's saying, sign me up. Where do I sign? Take my money. That we know that this probably takes some sort of demo, some sort of white paper, a case study, sending video content, and working alongside your marketing team, be able to automate not only that full sales cycle, but then once you get to closing the deal of how are you sending proposals and quotes? How are you getting e-signature? How are you sending invoices and bills? How are you onboarding the customer? We're going to talk about these use cases later on this call, but really making sure that all that stuff that needs to be done no matter what, when it's automated, it gives you more time to close new deals and not have to worry about really collecting payments or onboarding or renewing your customers in the future. Automation can help cover all that and make your lives much easier so you can focus your energy and time on new business.
Mm. I'm kind of curious, actually. Maybe we can come back to this, but for the folks watching, drop in the chat the favorite. If you've used automation in your sales process, just drop in like the favorite thing that is automated now that didn't used to be for you. Like, what's the painful process that you've seen make your life a little bit better? By the way, Brad, a question from Sean: does Conga use AI in data processing and analysis?
Yeah, we actually just last week announced an acquisition of a company called Contract Wrangler, which is an AI tool that is basically able to look over contracts and pull out relevant data. So the AI is able to basically pull all the data from a PDF or from third-party paper and be able to tell you a more cohesive like AI story behind the contract of what needs to be redlined, what data is pulled from that PDF and put into your CRM, such as Salesforce, things like that. So that's part of our strategy. And data and process automation, we're not using AI to fix processes, but our data and process automation tools do give data feedback of how long processes take by individual user. It's able to auto escalate based on whether you're in office or out of office or available.
That's so cool.
So things like that. So it gives you the appropriate data feedback, but then we're working right now actually on a full AI that's going to be able to fix those processes as they're happening. If that makes sense.
It does, and it's fascinating. And I think just to illustrate the point of how much digital transformation has been accelerated in the last year and a half, when you look at the chat, the use cases for automation span from signatures to automated alerts to get reps to update Salesforce through Slack, automating creation of renewals and quotes, so CPQ, chatbots. There are so many different Darren Heron throughout mix max sequences. So it's almost every piece, which is fascinating too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's so much that can be fixed, and frankly, there's so many companies that are helping. If you're working within Salesforce, you brought up, UiPath. You've brought up, I'm very familiar with Zapier. Of just things that you can plug in between your software systems that are helping kick off that next task, or when something happens, it's creating that task or that reminder or sending documents out. So there's so many ways now that, we're going to talk about really simple things that are going to be able to save your companies lots of money. So when you're selling them something, you're saying, here's the ROI on this, possible use case. So you're going to be able to realize that ROI immediately, save you time, save your finance team time, and be able to have your company realize that revenue faster when making sales. This next slide here is that really, once again, visualizing that the pandemic accelerated this digital transformation. So where we saw this kind of gradual change where people were, slowly picking things up, slowly learning, all of a sudden boomed. We actually had some data that the year ending in April, DocuSign reported about $469 million in revenue, which was a 59% jump year over year. So a company like DocuSign all of a sudden grew 60% just because a pandemic happened, where we saw e-signature as an example of companies that all of a sudden realized we have to change the way we do business. So whether it's where your team's located, the number of employees you have, what customers expect from you, and what your competitors offer, digital transformation is here. So people are doing it, and it's either time to adapt or miss out. So, with the information I provided, what can you do to begin your automation transformation? Specifically, what are repeatable processes that are going to make you and your team more productive, shorten time to revenue, provide a consistent and positive experience for your customer, and be an employee and role independent so this process continues on no matter who is joining your team or leaving your team, so you can get business done. So what I did is I really identified 7 use cases that can help you move in the right direction for your automation revenue transformation. The first one being proposals. So to summarize, companies need to generate on-brand and personalized quotes and proposals without manual processes. Avidian states, as you can see on the slide, that over 50% of sales organizations have improved their win rate by automating the proposal process. So when we take a step back and think about what the pain points are, what makes proposals so hard for business? For one, it's the time needed for proposal creation. And then what are you putting in this proposal? And is that data accurate? A lot of times you're dealing with manual error where you're copying and pasting something from Salesforce and putting it into that PDF, putting it into that Word document. Is that correct? And then when you send it to a customer, does that create customer pain when you realize I put in the wrong information, or does that cause internal pain with your company? A lot of times it's on outdated content. I don't know how many times I hear about customers who, have that old file saved on their desktop where they say, oh, this is our proposal template, or this is our Word document that we use, and it has some logo of their company from 4 years ago. The terms might have changed since then. And then how are you pulling that data every time? Every time you make a proposal or quote, are you having to go into that record, pull that data, put it in a respective Word document or PDF and send out? And a lot of people, frankly, are still using paper to get deals done. So by implementing automation in these processes, you're going to experience, a giant painkiller, a lot of relief for your company, because you're going to be able to speed up the sales team cycle. You're going to be able to pull data automatically. So in this use case, for example, what Conga is able to do is that when we're able to generate a document, we're able to press almost generate quote, and our software knows to pull the appropriate data from that those opportunity fields. So whether that's company name, username, the price point, is the discounting in place, where signatures needed to go, and it's all saved on an HTML pre-composed document. We're able to draw all the appropriate data, put it in that pre-composed quote, and press send. So you're able to put everything with automated data retrieval on consistent branding and templates, and then you're going to send these proposals and quotes automatically, which can include e-signature. So, I know people use DocuSign, people use EchoSign, we have Conga Sign, it's one of our products, whatever it might be, is that the ability to automatically send this out for e-signature and get it back can all be done with just a few buttons, or even can be set up automatically, that we know that when certain fields in Salesforce change, that they're ready for a proposal or quote, it automatically pulls all that data and can auto-send. So once you're implementing, obviously you're really realizing that improved time to revenue. You can drive business results with visibility into document data, so you can know where something sits. And you're creating a more efficient and better customer experience with higher win rates and faster deal cycles. One of our case studies is Signavio. Signavio is a Berlin-based SaaS provider, and they really are a business consultant that helps companies analyze and improve processes and operations. They use Conga's document generation tool, our CLM tool, our process automation tool, and our e-signature product. And they were able to realize about 15% or 20 hours a week of workload shift for their legal department, from manual tasks to strategic projects. And 75% of C-level signatures were now carried out electronically. So you're not only opening up time for your sales team, but Colin brought up earlier about how this affects other departments. So when you're able to fix these sales processes, not only are you saving yourself time, you're no longer having to create this proposal or quote, you're on to the next deal. But also it's saving your legal team time down the road. It's making sure that your finance and billing department doesn't have to deal with headaches of incorrect data, and you're helping get money in the door faster for your company.
It saves your customers some time too. It's much more enjoyable process. Just have the proposal. You don't have to wait 2 business days for someone to put it together. They click a button, you get it. You can share it around.
Don't you hear those pain points all the time of people like you look at that email like, great, I would love a quote. Let me get it to you in the next few days. And
Yeah,
you don't know by then if they've lost interest. Sometimes that email opens up and they're like, oh, who was that from? What was that about? I can't remember. But the ability to get off the call or finish an email and saying, yeah, this is included right here. Or let me get this to you in 2 minutes instead of 2 days. So creating that we're talking about that customer experience of not only have we improved your employee experience internally, but then because of that, customers are getting things faster when things are top of mind, which helps improve those win rates for you.
awesome. Yeah, Lisa
Exactly.
Hawkins says you got to get it to them while they're still excited. Exactly, Lisa.
100%.
Can't wait.
Our second use case is forecasting and opportunity updates. So, a lot of times managers and executives need to understand the sales pipeline to properly align resources. They need those insights into sales performance, trends, whether that's segmented by rep, lead source territory, industry vertical, to make these quick decisions and meet growth goals. And most sales organizations aren't meeting this need. So while most sales managers have tools in place to gather insights in general, they don't have the processes in place to work effectively and get updated data all the time. So actually, Forrester told us that 61% of sales managers have trouble gathering insights into current opportunities. So a big problem here is quality of data and manual data retrieval. So all the time we talk about, obviously in a platform like Salesforce, which is what I'm familiar with. I'm sure a lot of you will work in Salesforce as well. But when you're able to pull reporting, pull data, sometimes you have those reporting tools in place. But how do you make sure that data is up to date? How do you make sure that those records are being updated appropriately by sales reps, by operations reps, when someone knows that a quote's been sent or payment's been made? A lot of times that isn't done automatically. It's being have to done manually. So the ability to automate this forecasting cycle is going to really shorten that time spent on creating forecasts and reports. So imagine the ability to basically set up some sort of forecast, set it and forget it. You can even customize content by recipient. So whether you're another sales individual, whether you're a manager, whether you're a C-level employee, that you've built a single report, but the data that's being shown to different individuals is really segmented by that persona and making it appealing and easy to read. We talk a lot about branding, templatizing, making sure that it's whether it's internal or external, that it looks as professional as possible. So by automating this forecasting and opportunity update, you can improve time to revenue, have fewer clicks, get work done. You can see opportunities all in one place, make mass updates, and there's less training and onboarding needed. We're tying into that earlier point of that as your companies are growing, as new employees are coming on, how can you get them up to speed as fast as possible? How can you have a new leader come in and see the forecasts or an opportunity dashboard and say, here's where we can go, here are next steps, here's how I prioritize. Being able to automate even just the forecasting and opportunity updates within your CRM is huge. One of our customers, In Situ, they're a manufacturer of on-site water monitoring instruments. They use our document generation tool, Conga Composer, and Conga Grid, which is a data management tool. And they're able to accelerate sales data reporting, cut sales forecast reporting time in half, and be able to gain views and really get the ability to resegment data views very quickly. So when you're talking about an operations team who, you all are busy selling, but you need to be able to show your leaders really what the forecast looks like. What are next steps? What is the pipeline like? So whether that's you or whether it's an operations member doing that, a company like In Situ is able to cut that time in half, which then they're able to focus on other things of actually closing new business instead of reporting on what the business you're going to close is. So are there any questions on forecasting and opportunity updates? Oh yeah, I see that Jessica just wrote, forecasting for the next 3 years. I'm dealing with that headache right now. Absolutely. And that's a prime example of, we talked about that 62% earlier of this is a non-revenue generating activity that you're spending time on. People presume that sales sells, but a lot of times you're reporting on either what you have sold or what you're going to sell, which is taking away arguably present time revenue from the company.
Jason says it's really difficult to differentiate between bookings and revenue recognition in SaaS, which is another interesting point.
Yeah, no, that's very true, because really, obviously, under a SaaS model, whatever that payment cycle is, whether that's monthly, whether that's annually, what the payment terms are, that's really hard to book that. So depending on how that's set up in a CRM. So for example, when you're setting up any sort of data management, the fields you're setting up in Salesforce, you can set up different fields to show when revenue is recognized. And then a product like Conga Grid, which is our data management tool, is able to basically draw that and give you a visual view of what can be recognized now, what's recognized next month. You can export that into a visual chart or graph, things like that. But definitely understand the pain point. And when we're talking about not only improving sales processes in terms of how to make deals, but how to improve your time so you can spend more time making deals is equally as important. Our next use case is agreement management, which we know is a major pain point. So according to the contract management statistics for sales leaders, it takes about 3.4 weeks to create and approve a new contract. So a lot of these same pain points apply across a lot of these use cases, but we know for contracts, especially getting the deal done, getting the signature, the time needed for contract creation is crazy long. Typically, you need legal intervention. Are the details accurate? Is there discounting needed? What's the redlining back and forth? What's that speed value for contract delivery? We haven't even talked about, or we're just talking about creating the contract, not then getting it to a customer, going back and forth with redlining. That data that's locked in a PDF a lot of times, how is that data pulled back into your CRM to make sure that once that contract is signed, that data is immediately updated within your CRM? And then also, where are those contracts stored? So the legal persona knows all the time of what's that repository? Where do those contracts sit? Where can I see them all? Where can I approve things? What are the natural next steps? So once again, automating the contract process, the agreement management, because a lot of times you can send the proposal and quote, you can get pricing in place, you can help forecast, here's what's coming down the pipeline. But that contract arguably is the slowest part of the process, because that's when legal gets involved. And when legal's dealing with, I'm sure everyone knows, legal departments are dealing with a dozen other things besides closing deals. How do you make sure yours is the priority? Or if there's not something that needs a lot of legal intervention, how do you make sure that can easily be approved? So by automating the approval management process, you're able to increase the sales team velocity. You're able to pull the right data into these contracts right away and create that contract on a pre-composed template of kind of a beautifully branded document. You can provide online redlining and negotiations. So when we're talking about eliminating paper, people who are still using paper for contracts are sending a contract over, it's being sent back with those red lines, then someone has to go back in and retype it, send it back out. With OCC, which is online contract collaboration, so you're able to actually go in and be able to fix things, say, I want this to look this way, I want this to look that way. You see it all the time with DocuSign or some of our products as well, where you're able to make those changes in live. It saves you a lot of time. We're also talking about approval processes. So you can actually automate the approval process internally. So there's approval management software that you can purchase for your company that can actually set approval processes in place. For example, if a contract is discounted 10%, it goes to this person. If it's contracted more than 20%, it goes to this person and this person. So you can set up hierarchies. So if there's something that doesn't need much legal intervention, it skips that persona altogether and makes sure that your contract gets approved faster so you can send it out to a customer. So with all these things in place, we're improving sales team velocity. You can pull that data automatically. You have the online redlining for negotiations on consistent branding and templates. And you can send and receive contracts automatically and send for e-signature, which helps standardize this process. So once you implement really automating the agreement management, the contract lifecycle management process, takes fewer clicks to get work done. You can see where contract sits and really who that stakeholder is, of who it's sitting with now, who you need to knock on a door physically or virtually to get things done. You can see that end-to-end contract process, and you can automate all those steps if need be, which once again improves your experience, improves the customer experience, and helps you realize that revenue faster. Patient Point's one of our customers. They work with over 1,000 hospitals and 50,000 medical practices across the US, and they aid with point-of-care solutions between the doctor and patient. They use our DocGen tool, our data management tool, and our e-signature tool. And the time to process a contract for them used to take 30 to 45 minutes. It now takes 3 to 5 minutes. So they've cut down that contract processing time by 90%. They were also able to realize a return on investment of a full-time employee. So when pitching this to the company, we said you can save a whole head count of not only their base salary but benefits, everything like that, by implementing these tools. Cuts down on time, helps you realize that revenue faster. And they were also able, by switching e-signature providers, saved about $14,000 annually by really merging all these tools into one package of DocGen, contract sending, data management, and e-signature all in one.
Which, by the way, I'll add is another trend that I'm seeing is consolidation, right? I mean, you guys picked up an acquisition last month. There used to be that if you wanted to do all of these different pieces of automation, you needed a different provider for every single piece. And now we're seeing, not just Conga, but all kinds of other sales tech platforms handling more of the life cycle and more of workflows under one roof. Which is, I think, a benefit for everybody.
Yeah, 100%, because, there still is a massive pain point in the automation world and software world of how software talks to each other. So you see a lot of companies who are doing that, who are really providing a lot of different services. So you have a one vendor solution. So you say, when I go to X company, I know they do this, 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 this. So across all these different processes, I know that I'm not having to deal with making sure they talk to each other, bringing IT into the picture, what the payment cycles are for each one, what if one shuts down or one gets buggy, how does it affect the rest of the cycle? So you're seeing a lot of big vendors who are saying, how can I consolidate several different use cases under one company so we can kind of solve that full revenue operations cycle?
Yeah.
Next is e-signature, and we've talked about this a lot throughout the presentation. But the natural step after that, contract assent is to secure a signature. In the e-signature market, as I said earlier with that stat from DocuSign, for those of you who might have joined late, DocuSign reported $469 million in revenue ending in April 30th, which was 59% growth year over year. So we talked about the pain points of pen-to-paper signatures, slow and efficient signature processes, lack of tracking of where a signature sits, and then once signed, where the signature is stored. And really what customers want and what employees want is a repeatable templating of business documents, a modern to easy use solution that can be used across a variety of devices, and that repeatable process. So you can press one button, that data is being drawn appropriately into a templated e-signature document. If you're pressing send, you then know when a customer has read the contract, when they've opened it, if they forwarded it to someone else. You have all those insights, so you know that natural next step it takes, so you're not checking in if they haven't read it yet, or you're not checking in. You know how to properly message your conversation with the prospect to make sure that you're not scaring them away, that you're providing them peace of mind and really enabling them in signing this document and moving on to the next step. So with e-signature, really what you want people to be able to sign on any device, anytime, anywhere, speed up that approval process from days to just minutes, save costs, get that full audit trail so you can not only see where a contract sits, but also technology now is able to authenticate signatures. So you have that kind of audit trail of, where something sits, and also if someone asks for that proof, that all sits in a repository. And then these PDFs are secured for long-term validation. So you have that security aspect as well. Things aren't sitting in a filing cabinet. Instead, it's sitting, stored somewhere safe online. One of our customers, Traction Demand, uses our e-signature product. They do Salesforce implementation in North America. They're able to reduce that contract creation time by 75% and increase signature velocity by 95%, which saved them more than 1,000 hours per year in non-revenue generating activities. So, 1,000 hours a year is that's multiple employees' full salary by just implementing an e-signature tool into their suite of products.
That is nuts. 1,000 hours a year.
Yep. Just this is our fifth use case out of 7, and I know that we're coming up on the hour, so I will try to speed this up. But our next use case is billing and invoice generation. So now that you've nurtured and closed the deal, it's time to collect. So manual processes get in the way of that revenue attainment. So a lot of times you have errors, duplicate invoices are sent, the invoicing cycle is slow, and that can damage you and your company's reputation in the process. So if you can't be trusted to send accurate invoices, or you're sending things with incorrect data, duplicate sending, how can your customer trust you moving forward? You've gotten the signature, you're ready to go, and you have that snag that can affect company reputation. And we actually have a stat saying that when the payment deadline is approaching, just 16% of companies have automated processes for payment reminders on unpaid invoices. So with these pain points of incorrect billing, incorrect pricing being used, a lengthy cash conversion cycle, that all this can be resource and time intensive. But by automating these processes, all of a sudden you're generating invoices and receipts on your schedule. It can be automatically pulled and sent with one click of a button, or automatically when certain fields are changed within your CRM. You can automate due date reminders and send internal notifications, set up tasks for unpaid invoices for members to follow up. So all that can be done, via tasks, via chatter, things like that. And you can automatically log activities in your CRM, so you never double send that same thing. So our software can say, well, this has already been sent, or here's where we are in this process of the kind of customer lifecycle journey. So therefore, a previous action can't be put into place. So with clean data management, improved time to revenue, you can drive business results much faster, and which is going to create that better employee and customer experience. I'm going to keep digging that point in, because when you are improving processes internally, it creates that better customer experience, and everyone around the board is happier. One of our customers, Davies Office, they're a remanufacturer of office furniture here in the US. They produce about 10,000 purchase orders per year. And when they, in their old process pre-pandemic, they had about a 7-step process that took 2 hours over a 3-day period to just finalize a purchase order and send it out. But once they were able to implement an automation software that helped with billing and invoicing, they saved about $61,000 a year, and they had an ROI payback period of 3 days. It took them 3 days to realize this investment of really automating the invoice and billing process. And they were able to reduce that time spent at 2 hours over 3 days to less than 8 minutes total. So this improved the efficiency of both the sales team and the purchasing group, and they can move on to that next deal, next contract, next signature, and next bill, so you can realize revenue faster.
Lisa brought up another good point. She said she appreciates the overview of the impact of the pandemic on these work changes and the need to automate. She said it could be helpful in change management in an organization when automation is implemented. In other words, that particular context, that graph you showed of the inflection point of the pandemic hitting, being a useful internal messaging point in trying to drive change. It's not that this is a continuous evolution. It is a continued evolution of things that were already happening. And it's not that anyone's saying the world is different because of the pandemic. We're saying these changes were happening, and because of the pandemic, they're now happening faster, which adds, I think, some urgency to this for anybody who's trying to make changes in their own organization.
Yeah, and when you're talking about change happening faster, is that this is now becoming the status quo. Is that, while we're talking about this, arguably your competitors are, doing the same thing, or they've already implemented these tools. So we're talking about speed to value. If you're both competing for the same customer or same prospect, who can get that information to a customer faster at the right time with quality data, on a more beautifully presented document? Who looks more professional? So when we're talking about change management, it's something that's being done, and those visualizations of not to say it wasn't happening before, but now it's going faster than ever. So we have to move equally as fast, because this is now the customer expectation that things can be done quickly. So it's up to companies to adapt. Our 6th of 7 use cases is really the customer onboarding. So onboarding is invaluable to keep these projects on track, ensure clients are satisfied with your work, and really understand next steps. But it can require a serious time investment. A lot of times, after receiving payment or after getting that contract signed, onboarding either the customer, whether that's externally or even onboarding someone internally. What is that order of operations of content being sent to them? Is it being sent in the right order? Is it being sent in a timely manner? Is everything getting to them? Like I know so many times where a lot of times you'll have a new customer and you send a set of emails and you send a follow-up of, oops, I forgot to include this attachment. Oh, I forgot to, this link's super valuable as well. And that disjointed experience can really create that poor first impression. Similar to the incorrect or double billing or kind of incorrect invoices being sent, of your first impression of the onboarding now that you've, have a customer signed is vital. And the stat here, obviously, from Rain Group is 56% of business consulting firms don't fully deliver on their promises, because you say all these things and you have that initial kickoff meeting, you have that onboarding session or onboarding email, and the things you're sending can be disjointed, inaccurate, whatever it might be. So this onboarding experience can be resource and time intensive, on outdated content. That speed to value of once that contract is signed, how quickly can I get this sent out, can be a major pain point. There's version tracking issues and really one-by-one documents being sent out. But imagine automating this process with a click of a button when you know that someone, in Salesforce gets turned from a prospect to a customer, or from that, signature sign to paid, whatever that, value change is in your Salesforce record. All of a sudden, we know to automatically send a pre-composed onboarding email with all of the up-to-date, documentation, links, copy, everything. So, from hours to minutes that you're now sending, this welcome email of welcome to the team or welcome to our company with all the right things in place. So you're creating that better customer experience, specifically in this use case, with document accuracy, advanced automation that's sending all the right things at the right time to your new customer, with fewer clicks to get things done. This can be sent automatically. This can be time-based of, X number of hours, X number of days after something is signed that this gets sent. And then we have follow-up emails based on interaction, opens, clicks, and kind of this navigation tree that you're sending the right message at the right time as you help onboard your new customer to your business or service. So
this is something we're doing and taking advantage of actually in the Sales Hacker community. When you join, you now get, in our case, it's very simple, but you get some welcome emails that are now automated and there's a flow to it. And that actually has allowed us to put more time into manually onboarding and having some closer touch as well. Where, previously that time was going into drafting emails. So, it's, just again to say it's not just sales, right? This is universal.
Absolutely. The use case here, HFM advisors, they were creating action plans that were sent out. And this is more kind of in a QBR example, but really whether that's onboarding or really from account management level of keeping your customers happy. How long does it take to get that messaging out, those presentations, the reporting, whatever it might be? They were doing this about twice a year, and it was taking them, about over an hour for each report. Now this takes 30 seconds because they're able to pull all the right data, all the right information for that specific customer, all into a Word doc, a PDF, a presentation, whatever's being sent to them, and it's being sent on a set cadence automatically. So once again, this 30-second process, they can now go through their 150 clients like that, and then move on to finding new business and collecting revenue. The final use case is renewal management. So nearly 3/4 of business customers say they're not getting valuable from a majority of their tech products they use. So what's going to happen once that contract period ends is that if you don't have a plan in place to demonstrate value of your services, or your customers aren't even seeing it, you're going to lose that business at renewal time. And increasing customer loyalty by 5% can increase profits by up to 95%. And I think everyone here will agree, senior management will agree that retention is the most effective route to demonstrating, value and growing your business. If you're not retaining your customers and you're working equally hard just to keep the status quo, that's not scalable. So pain points here are very similar across the board. Of a very manual task at the start of a renewal process is how are you gathering the right data? What's your process? Are things being sent on time? There are so many pain points of people realizing they weren't even up for renewal until mere days before their renewal happened, and then all of a sudden they get a disjointed email with new terms, new billing, whatever it might be, and it creates really poor customer satisfaction. All of a sudden they realize,
experience.
Yeah, why is this jumping? Why is this hiked? Why wasn't I informed of this? I didn't know that this was upcoming. Whatever it might be. So The ability to automate this process, we're including all the right information at the right time. So, for example, even internally at Conga, we use a renewal process that we know that 90 days prior to renewal, not only is that account flagged in terms of it actually highlights red in our Salesforce view of, this needs action, but then we can press one renewal button and it's able to draw all of the current terms into a pre-composed renewal document, send it out in an email, and then we have triggered emails that are sent out from our sales team every 10 days thereafter to remind them that if they haven't taken action of, here's this upcoming renewal, here are the terms, if you want to talk about this, that we can negotiate, redline, go back and forth, and tying in all those other use cases of, how you're automating the contract process, how you're automating the billing process. All that ties into the renewal. So being able to automate all these things with one click, you're staying top of mind. It's on a beautifully composed document with the right data, and you're giving the customer due time to understand what's coming and what might have changed. So here you're improving time to revenue, you're seeing where that process sits, and you're getting really higher renewal win rates with a faster deal cycle, and you're keeping the customer happy. One of our customers, Ringlead, they're a Salesforce ISV partner. They were able to implement our document generation tool along with actually Adobe EchoSign and Salesforce Sales Cloud. And they realized about a $29,000 cost savings with an ROI payback period of 7 days. So once again, realizing the ROI in 1 week. And their sales and customer service team saves about 530 hours or 66 working days a year on contracts and renewals. So once again, these values of the pandemic has brought this change, and we're seeing huge quantitative values in just fixing one step. All these are just fixing one part of the sales process. And really what I like to say is that, I gave you 7 use cases, and a lot of people say, where do I start? The short answer is it depends. What is that biggest pain point? What's that biggest bottleneck, or what can be attacked first from a cost value? A lot of times, a really simple step is the renewals, because that's where a lot of the money sits. Is if we can just fix this and automate this process where people are getting the right things at the right time, that's the way to go. Or maybe your pain point is with duplicate billing or incorrect billing with incorrect discounting. Whatever it might be, is that really stepping back as a company and deciding, what is that low-hanging fruit? What's that one thing I can change first and go from there? You don't need to really, conquer everything all at once. We really recommend, finding that initial use case, getting it fixed, and going from there. But while I gave you a few examples, Colin brought it up earlier, this just doesn't exist in sales. There are dozens of business processes across all departments that you can automate to help realize revenue faster, increase productivity, provide a consistent and positive experience for your customers, and decrease the workload and manual dependencies for you. So, our goal is to transform commercial operations in general and automate these processes. So really, how are you getting business done? How efficient is it? Are you putting the customer first? And how connected is each step to your full process? And you're going to realize that by beginning to automate your commercial operations processes with some of these use cases, you're realizing revenue faster with a team of happier employees, happier coworkers, and happier customers across the board. So really, I talked about at the beginning of the presentation that 62% of a salesperson's time is spent on responsibilities that don't produce revenue. But as you've seen, it doesn't have to be this way, because automation really should be a necessity, not a nice to have at this point. So I would recommend that you identify processes that can be automated, learn how they interact with your CRM, your data management tools, identify a vendor that can help you take that first step, and then as you grow, start to add more tools, add more things to automate different use cases as you make that digital transformation. That's all I had. I know we're right at time. Are there any other questions?
We've got some great thank yous here. One extra quick point from Lisa, which is that, starting with low-hanging fruit can definitely help get buy-in quickly and sell upper management on adoption of automation. And a couple thanks from Pete, Jason, George. Shout out to all you guys, and thanks to everybody for showing up and asking great questions, having some cool conversations. We hope to see you again, and I also hope to see you around the Sales Hacker community. So we can keep the conversation going there. There is a question here from Caitlin McKenzie, if you have the time, Brad.
How do you prevent overdoing it with automation where it doesn't help? I mean, that's where we like to, we talked about taking those baby steps and that low hanging fruit. Is that a lot of times different software companies are going to try to sell you the full suite at the start. And I'm not saying that, you know, those companies are doing it wrong, but a lot of times you are biting off more than you can chew. That upon that renewal period, you're saying, I only used 10% of what you gave me. And the rest of this either was a waste or it didn't need to be automated. And a lot of automation tools right now can actually talk between automated steps and manual steps. So when you're finding the right kind of process automation tool, or when you're talking about like robotic process automation, it might automate one task. It's not going to automate the whole step because sometimes you still need that manual intervention. So really, when it's working with that software vendor, it's better understanding, and usually they have transformation specialists or they have solutions engineers who say, let's talk about this full pain point and understand where automation needs to happen and where it doesn't need to happen, because we don't need to totally really like flip the script on you and create almost too much pain by too much automation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the advice there is go slow at first. At first, use the mantra, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Later on, you'll find things that aren't broken on the surface, but do need to be fixed. But if you just start by addressing obvious pain points, that's the right start. Thanks again, Brad. This was amazing. Awesome data in there. Really cool to walk through all of those case studies and hear Conga's approach to automation. And yeah, of course, a huge thanks to Conga for sponsoring. Hope to see you soon. Thanks again for stopping by.
Thanks so much, Colin. I appreciate it. And yeah, feel free, anyone, reach out with any questions, connect with me on LinkedIn. And nice to meet everyone. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.